The acrid smell of burning metal and gasoline filled Wade Andrews' nostrils as he slammed on his brakes, the old pickup truck skidding to a halt on the rain-slicked road. Ahead of him, a sleek silver sports car had careened off the country highway and flipped onto its side, flames already licking at the undercarriage. Without a second thought, Wade threw his truck into park and sprinted toward the wreckage, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Daddy, what's happening?" His 6-year-old daughter Lily called from the truck, her voice high with fear. "Stay in the truck, Lily," he shouted over his shoulder. "And call 911. Wade reached the overturned vehicle and dropped to his knees, peering through the driver's side window. A woman was slumped against her seatbelt, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. The smoke was thickening and he could feel the heat intensifying. There wasn't much time. "Hey, can you hear me?" Wade pounded on the window, and to his relief, the woman's eyes fluttered open dark, disoriented eyes that locked onto his with sudden clarity. "Help," she mouthed, raising a shaking hand to the window. Wade didn't hesitate. He pulled off his jacket, wrapped it around his fist, and smashed the window, clearing away the shards of glass. The flames were growing higher now, licking at the passenger side. Wade reached in and fumbled with the seatbelt release, his fingers clumsy with adrenaline. "I'm going to get you out," he promised, finally clicking the buckle open. The woman slumped toward him, and he caught her under the arms, pulling her carefully through the window opening. She was lighter than he expected, and he managed to drag her several yards away from the car before the entire vehicle erupted in flames. Wade lowered her gently to the ground, cradling her head in his lap as sirens wailed in the distance. Her eyes were open now, focusing on his face. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse from the smoke. "Dad, Dad." Lily was running toward them, her rain jacket flapping behind her like wings. "I called 911 like you said." "Good job, sweetheart," Wade said, motioning for her to stay back. "The ambulance is coming. You did good." The woman stirred, trying to sit up. "My name is Danielle," she said, wincing as she touched the cut on her forehead. "Danielle Porter." "Wade Andrews," he replied, gently encouraging her to lie still. "And that's my daughter, Lily. Help is on the way, just try not to move." Danielle's eyes drifted to the burning wreckage of her car, and a small, humorless laugh escaped her lips. "My assistant warned me about these country roads. I should have listened." Wade was about to respond when the ambulance arrived, followed closely by a fire truck and police car. The paramedics rushed to take over, and Wade stepped back, gathering Lily in his arms as they watched the emergency personnel work. "Is the lady going to be okay, Daddy?" Lily asked, her small hands clutching his shirt. Wade looked down at his daughter's worried face and then glanced at Danielle, who was being loaded onto a stretcher, an oxygen mask covering her face. But her eyes, those dark, striking eyes, were still on him. "I think she'll be okay, Lily Bug," he said. "I really think she will." Wade hadn't expected to see Danielle Porter again. The encounter on the road seemed like something out of a movie, dramatic and intense, but ultimately a brief intersection of two very different lives. He had his hands full with his contracting business that was barely staying afloat, raising Lily on his own, and keeping up with the mortgage payments on their small farmhouse outside of Cedar Creek, a town where everyone knew everyone else's business. 3 days after the accident, Wade was kneeling on Mrs. Henderson's kitchen floor, fixing a leaky pipe under her sink when his phone buzzed in his pocket. Lily's school rarely called during the day, and a jolt of parental panic shot through him as he fumbled to answer. "Mr. Andrews." The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, professional, female. "Yes, this is Meredith Campbell. I'm the personal assistant to Danielle Porter. Miss Porter would like to thank you in person for your assistance during her accident earlier this week. Would you be available to meet her for dinner this evening?" Wade blinked, surprised. I have my daughter. I don't have anyone to watch her on short notice." Miss Porter anticipated that. "Your daughter is, of course, welcome. A car will pick you up at your residence at 6:30 p.m. "Is that acceptable?" Wade found himself agreeing before he fully processed what was happening. After hanging up, he stared at the leaky pipe, wondering what exactly he had just gotten himself and Lily into. At precisely 6:30 that evening, a gleaming black SUV pulled into Wade's gravel driveway. Lily bounced excitedly on the porch, wearing her favorite blue dress, the one with stars that she insisted on for special occasions. "Is this like Cinderella, Daddy?" she asked as Wade double-checked that the house was locked. Wade smiled at his daughter's imagination. "Not quite, sweetheart. We're just going to thank the nice lady for dinner, okay?" The driver opened the door for them, and Lily climbed in with wide-eyed wonder at the leather seats and privacy partition. Wade followed, feeling distinctly out of place in his best jeans and button-down shirt, the only decent outfit he owned that wasn't stained with paint or plaster dust. The restaurant wasn't in Cedar Creek. The driver took them to Highfield, the nearest city, about 40 minutes away. They pulled up to the Sapphire Room, an upscale establishment Wade had driven past many times but never imagined entering. The maitre d' greeted them by name and led them to a private dining area in the back. And there she was. Danielle Porter stood as they entered, a small bandage on her forehead the only evidence of her recent trauma. In the dim, elegant lighting of the restaurant, Wade could fully appreciate what he hadn't noticed during the rescue. She was stunning. Her dark hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, and she wore a simple but clearly expensive black dress. Her smile, though, was what caught his attention, genuine and warm. "Mr. Andrews," she extended her hand, "and you must be Lily. Thank you both for coming." Wade shook her hand, noticing the softness of her skin against his calloused palm. "Please call me Wade." "Then you must call me Danielle," she replied, gesturing for them to sit. "I ordered some sparkling apple juice for Lily. I hope that's okay." Lily's eyes widened at the elegant glass placed in front of her, complete with a fancy straw and fresh berries floating on top. "It looks like princess juice," she declared. Danielle laughed, a light musical sound. "That's exactly what it is. Only princesses and very brave girls get to drink it." Wade watched as his daughter beamed with delight, sipping her princess juice with exaggerated care. "You didn't have to do this," he said to Danielle. "I just did what anyone would have done." Danielle's expression grew serious, but not everyone would have done it, Wade. "The paramedics told me how close it was, how the car exploded just minutes after you pulled me out." She glanced at Lily, who was happily examining the menu pictures, then lowered her voice. "You risked your life for a complete stranger. I owe you everything." Wade felt his cheeks warm under her steady gaze. "Well, I'm just glad you're okay." As the evening progressed, Wade found himself relaxing. Danielle was surprisingly easy to talk to, asking Lily questions about school and her favorite books, and showing genuine interest in Wade's contracting business. She never mentioned her own work, and Wade didn't ask, though he was curious about what kind of job allowed for private dining rooms and chauffeur-driven subs. It wasn't until dessert arrived, a chocolate creation that made Lily gasp with delight, that Danielle finally brought up the reason for her presence in Cedar Creek. "I actually came to your town to look at a property," she said, twirling her spoon in her coffee. "My company is considering expanding, and Cedar Creek has the perfect location for what we need." "What kind of business are you in?" Wade asked, finally giving in to his curiosity. Danielle hesitated, as if choosing her words carefully. "I run a technology company. We develop software for renewable energy systems. Nothing very exciting." Something in her tone made Wade think there was more to it than she was saying, but he didn't press. The evening was pleasant, and he didn't want to ruin it with awkward questions. As they finished dessert, Lily grew sleepy, leaning against Wade's arm with drooping eyelids. Danielle noticed immediately. "I should let you get her home," she said, signaling for the check, which arrived promptly. Before Wade could reach for it, Danielle had already handed over a credit card. "Please, this is the least I can do," she insisted when Wade protested. Outside, the same black SUV waited to take them home. As Lily climbed in, already half asleep, Danielle touched Wade's arm. "I'll be in town for a few more days," she said. "Would it be all right if I called you again?" Perhaps without the formality of a chauffeur and private dining room, Wade looked at her, surprised by the request and even more surprised by how much he wanted to say yes. "I'd like that," he said honestly. Danielle's smile lit up her entire face. "Good, so would I." 2 days later, Wade was stacking lumber in his workshop behind the house when a sleek electric car pulled into his driveway. He wiped his hands on a rag and walked out to meet Danielle as she stepped from the vehicle, looking much more casual than at the restaurant in jeans, a simple blouse, and a light jacket. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, glancing at the sawdust on his clothes. Wade shook his head. "Just catching up on some projects. Lily's at a playdate until 5. "Perfect timing, then," Danielle smiled. "I wanted to see if you might show me around town. I've been stuck in meetings and I'd like to actually see Cedar Creek through local eyes." The request was so normal, so unpretentious, that Wade found himself agreeing immediately. "Let me just clean up a bit." They took his truck, a decision that made Danielle visibly happy as she climbed into the passenger seat, running her hand appreciatively over the worn dashboard. "This has character," she said. "My car is so sterile in comparison." Wade laughed. "That's a polite way of saying old and beat up." "No, it's authentic," she insisted, "like its owner." There wasn't much to show in Cedar Creek, the town square with its gazebo and ancient oak trees. The small local businesses that had somehow survived the arrival of big-box stores in neighboring Highfield. The community center, where Wade sometimes taught weekend workshops on basic home repairs. But Danielle seemed genuinely interested in all of it, asking questions about the town's history and the people they passed, most of whom waved at Wade with undisguised curiosity about his companion. They ended up at River's Edge, a small cafe overlooking the creek that gave the town its name. Over coffee and homemade pie, Wade found himself talking about things he rarely shared: his dreams for expanding his business, the challenges of raising Lily alone after his wife died of cancer 3 years ago, his fears that he wasn't doing enough for his daughter. "She seems like a remarkable child," Danielle said. "Happy, confident, kind. You're doing something very right, Wade." "I try," he admitted. "But sometimes I worry about what I can't give her: dance lessons, new clothes, a college fund that isn't pathetically small." Danielle reached across the table and touched his hand lightly. "Those things matter less than you think. My parents had money, but they were never there. I would have traded every expensive toy and private lesson for more time with them." Wade studied her face, sensing there was more to her story. "Is that why you work so hard now? To prove something to them?" Danielle looked surprised, then thoughtful. "Maybe. I never thought of it that way. But yes, perhaps I've been trying to build something that would make them proud, even though they're not here to see it." "And have you?" Wade asked. "Built something to be proud of?" A shadow crossed Danielle's face. "I've built something successful. Whether it's something to be proud of, I'm not always sure." Before Wade could ask what she meant, his phone rang. It was Mrs. Peterson, Lily's friend's mother, asking if he could pick Lily up early as her son had developed a fever. "I need to get my daughter," Wade explained as he ended the call. "Of course," Danielle said. "Maybe we could continue this another time. I'd love to meet for dinner again, just the two of us." "If that's possible for you." Wade hesitated, thinking of babysitters and budgets, but the hopeful look in Danielle's eyes made him nod. "I think I can arrange that." When Wade arrived at the Petersons' house, Lily ran to him with excited news. "Daddy, I got invited to a sleepover at Emma's house tomorrow night. Can I go, please?" Emma's mom already said it was okay. Wade looked at Mrs. Peterson, who confirmed with a smile. "The girls have been planning it all afternoon. We'd love to have her." On the drive home, Wade found himself thinking about Danielle's dinner invitation and the unexpected opening in his schedule. He waited until Lily was occupied with her homework before sending a text message to the number Danielle had given him. "Turns out I'm free tomorrow night if that dinner invitation still stands." Her reply came almost instantly. "Perfect. I'll pick you up at 7." The next evening, Wade stood on his porch feeling inexplicably nervous. He dropped Lily off at Emma's house, showered, and changed into his one decent outfit again, wishing he had more options. When Danielle's car appeared, right on time, he took a deep breath and walked down the steps to meet her. Danielle had chosen a small Italian restaurant in a neighboring town, intimate but not intimidatingly fancy. Over pasta and wine, their conversation flowed easily, moving from town gossip to favorite books to childhood memories. Wade found himself laughing more than he had in years, drawn to Danielle's intelligence, her dry humor, and the way she listened as if everything he said mattered. "So how did you end up in contracting?" she asked as they shared a tiramisu. Wade smiled at the memory. "My dad was a builder. I used to follow him around job sites from the time I could walk. He taught me everything: how to frame a wall, run electrical, lay tile. When he died my senior year of high school, I took over his business. Never really considered doing anything else." "You must have been very young to take on that responsibility," Danielle observed. Wade shrugged. 18, old enough. Mom needed the income and I already knew the work. It was hard at first, convincing clients to trust a teenager, but Dad had a good reputation. Eventually, I built my own. "And you enjoy it, the work itself?" "I love it," Wade said without hesitation. "There's something about taking a space that's broken or outdated and transforming it into something beautiful and functional. Seeing the before and after, knowing I made that happen with my own hands, it never gets old." Danielle's eyes softened. "That's how I feel about my company. Creating something from nothing, watching it grow, knowing it can make a difference." "Tell me about it," Wade prompted. "Your company, I mean. You've been pretty vague about what you actually do." Danielle hesitated, then seemed to come to a decision. "It's called Ecosphere Technologies. We develop software systems for renewable energy: solar, wind, hydroelectric. Our programs help maximize efficiency, predict maintenance needs, and balance power distribution. We started small, just me and 2 engineers in a garage, but now, Wade encouraged when she paused. "Now we have offices in 12 countries and over 5,000 employees," she said, watching his face carefully. "The company went public 3 years ago. The IPO was successful." Wade stared at her, processing this information. "So when you say your company is considering expanding to Cedar Creek?" "I mean, Ecosphere is looking to build a research campus there, yes. The old Westfield property by the river has everything we need: space, natural resources, proximity to universities for talent recruitment." "The Westfield property is huge," Wade said, thinking of the abandoned factory site that had sat empty for decades. That would change everything for Cedar Creek." Danielle nodded. "I know, that's why I came personally to assess the impact. We don't want to overwhelm the community or change its character." Wade was quiet for a moment, piecing things together. "Danielle, I mean, Ecosphere is a major company. Are you saying that I'm the founder and CEO?" "Yes." She looked almost apologetic. "And after the IPO, the press started calling me a billionaire. I hate that label, but technically it's accurate." Wade set down his fork, feeling suddenly out of his depth. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because the moment people find out, everything changes," she said simply. "They stop seeing me and start seeing dollar signs or opportunities or someone to impress. I just wanted to be a person having dinner with another person I find interesting." The sincerity in her voice touched Wade. "I get that," he said finally. "But it's a pretty big thing to leave out." "I know. I'm sorry." Danielle reached across the table and took his hand. "Does it change things between us?" Wade looked at their hands, hers manicured and smooth, his rough with calluses and small scars from years of physical labor. "I don't know," he answered honestly. It should, shouldn't it? You're in a completely different world from me. Not as different as you might think, she said quietly. Money changes circumstances, not people. At least it shouldn't. Wade wasn't entirely convinced, but as the evening continued, he found himself forgetting about ecosphere and billions and focusing instead on the woman across from him, her laugh, her quick mind, the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled. By the time they stood on his porch saying goodnight, the revelation of her wealth seemed less important than the connection he felt with her. "When do you leave Cedar Creek?" he asked, suddenly aware that their time might be limited. "My team leaves tomorrow, but I've decided to stay a few more days," Danielle said, standing close enough that he could smell her perfume, something light and floral. "I want to see more of the town, maybe meet more of its people." Wade understood what she wasn't saying. "I'd like to see you again." "Good," she smiled, "because I'd like that too." Their goodnight kiss was brief but electric, a promise of something neither of them had expected to find in Cedar Creek. The next few days passed in a blur for Wade. He still had jobs to complete and Lily to care for, but he and Danielle carved out time together, coffee between his appointments, a picnic by the creek with Lily, evening walks after Lily was in bed, with Wade's neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez staying at the house. Each encounter deepened their connection, building a foundation that surprised them both with its strength. On Thursday evening, they sat on Wade's back porch swing, watching fireflies rise from the tall grass in his yard. Lily had been asleep for an hour, and the night was peaceful around them. "I have to go back to Boston on Saturday," Danielle said, breaking the comfortable silence. "The board meeting can't be postponed any longer." Wade had been expecting this, but it still hit him harder than anticipated. "I understand. You have a company to run." "A company I can run from anywhere, most of the time," she said carefully. "Especially if we build the new campus here." Wade turned to look at her. "Is that still happening?" "The board votes next week, but it looks promising. Cedar Creek checks all our boxes, and preliminary community feedback has been positive." "That would mean you'd be here sometimes," Wade said, trying not to sound too hopeful. Danielle took his hand. "It would, but Wade, I've been thinking, what if I were here more than sometimes?" "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath. "I could base myself here instead of Boston, at least part of the time. The company is stable enough that I don't need to be physically present for day-to-day operations, and remote work is standard in tech anyway." Wade stared at her, surprised by the suggestion. "You'd consider moving to Cedar Creek for the company?" "Not just for the company," Danielle said softly. "I know it's fast, and maybe I'm crazy for even thinking this way, but I haven't felt this, connected to anyone in a very long time." "Maybe ever," Wade's heart raced. "I feel it too, but Danielle, our lives are so different. You run a global company, I fix leaky faucets and build bookshelves. How would that even work?" "I don't know exactly," she admitted, "but I'd like to find out, if you would." Wade thought about the unlikely path that had brought them together, a rainy road, a burning car, a chance to be someone's hero when he'd been feeling like anything but. He thought about Lily, who had already grown attached to Miss Danny and her stories about building computers and traveling the world. And he thought about the feeling in his chest whenever Danielle was near, a sense of rightness he hadn't experienced since losing his wife. "I'd like that too," he said finally, "to find out." Their kiss this time was deeper, a sealing of an unspoken promise between them. Friday was Danielle's last day before returning to Boston, and they decided to spend it together as a family, with Lily between them as they explored the Cedar Creek Nature Preserve. Watching Danielle help his daughter identify wildflowers and spot turtles sunning on logs, Wade felt a certainty growing inside him. Whatever challenges lay ahead, distance, different worlds, the inevitable complications, they were worth facing for the chance at the happiness he saw unfolding before him. That evening, after Lily was tucked in with a new book Danielle had brought her, they sat at Wade's kitchen table with a bottle of wine, planning for the weeks ahead. "I'll be back in 3 weeks for the site assessment," Danielle said. And we can video call every day until then. Wade nodded. And I can bring Lily to Boston sometime. She's never seen a big city. I'd love that, Danielle smiled. I could show you both my favorite places. As they talked, Wade marveled at how quickly his life had changed. A week ago, he'd been a struggling contractor worried about making ends meet. Now he was planning visits to Boston with a woman whose company was valued in the billions. It seemed unreal, and yet the most natural thing in the world. "What are you thinking?" Danielle asked, noticing his pensive expression. "I'm thinking that if someone had told me a week ago that I'd be sitting here with you, planning a future together, I'd have said they were crazy," Wade admitted. "But now I can't imagine anything else." Danielle's eyes softened. That day on the road. "I was coming from a meeting I didn't want to attend, heading to another I dreaded even more. My life was full of things but empty of meaning. And then my car went off the road and you appeared, and somehow in the middle of the worst moment, I found exactly what I needed." "A concussion and second-degree burns?" Wade teased. Danielle laughed. "No, you impossible man, a reminder of what really matters: courage, kindness, connection." She reached across the table and took his hand. "You." The following morning, Wade and Lily drove Danielle to the small regional airport where her private jet waited. The goodbye was bittersweet, with Lily extracting multiple promises from Danielle to call and send pictures of her Boston office, with all the computers. When it was Wade's turn to say goodbye, he found himself at a loss for words. How could he explain what these few days had meant to him? How they had rekindled a part of his heart he thought was permanently extinguished. Danielle seemed to understand. She wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him, heedless of the curious stares from the ground crew. 3 weeks, she whispered against his lips. "It's not so long." "Not so long," he agreed, holding her close for one more moment before letting her go. As the jet taxied down the runway, Lily slipped her small hand into Wade's. "Is Miss Danny going to be your girlfriend now, Daddy?" Wade smiled down at his daughter. "Would that be okay with you?" Lily considered this with the serious deliberation of a 6-year-old. "Yes," she decided finally. "She makes you smile like in the pictures with Mommy, and she knows about stars and frogs and computers." "She does know a lot," Wade agreed, his throat tight with emotion. "And she looks at you like you're her favorite person," Lily added with the simple wisdom of childhood. "That's important for girlfriends." Wade watched as the jet lifted into the clear blue sky, carrying Danielle back to her world of board meetings and global enterprises. But part of her would remain here in Cedar Creek, just as part of him would follow her to Boston. "Yes, Lily Bug," he said, squeezing his daughter's hand as they turned back toward the truck. "I think Miss Danny is going to be my girlfriend, and maybe someday she'll be even more than that." "Like a wife?" Lily asked excitedly. Wade smiled, his heart full of a hope he'd long ago abandoned. "Maybe, if we're very lucky." As they drove home along the same country road where it all began, Wade found himself glancing at the spot where Danielle's car had gone off the road. What had seemed like disaster had instead been the beginning of something beautiful, proof that sometimes, even in the darkest moments, life could surprise you with exactly what you never knew you needed. And 3 weeks didn't seem so long to wait at all.